Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now in today's video, I'm going to learn how to build a modern contact us page using HTML and CSS. You are going to learn how to make these contact details right here at the left hand side, and also at the right hand side you're going to learn how to make this really clean input right here that you can actually type on. Really clean. You are going to learn how to make this submit button right here. Now we're not going to stop there, we're going to take it a step further. And when we reduce the screen size, you're going to notice that this web page is going to be fully responsive for all screen devices. Even on mobile devices, it's going to be fully responsive. You're going to learn how to do all this in this video. Before we dive into it, I'd really appreciate it if you smash on the like button. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm push this content to more people just like you who are going to find it helpful. And basically just consider it as a little way of supporting the channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on helpful web development tutorials like this. Let's dive into it. Now I already have my index.html file created, and inside my index.html file, inside the header tag, I'm actually importing Thought Awesome to my project with this CDN link right here, and also with this link right here, I'm linking this index.html file to a style.css file, this style.css file right here. And inside this style.css file, up here I'm importing Google fonts from Google, and right here I'm applying that fonts to my project Poppins. So let's start building this contact us page. So I'm going to close up this sidebar. I'm going to head to my index.html file. Inside my body tag, I'm going to create a div. This div is going to have a class name of container. And this is a container that's going to wrap around everything in the contact us page. So I'll copy this container name. I head to my style.css file. Then I'm going to paste that right here. First off, I'm going to give the container a minimum height of 100 VH. And this minimum height of 100 VH I give to this container is going to ensure that the container occupies 100% of the viewport of device is being viewed on. If it's being viewed on a mobile device, it's going to occupy 100% of the height of the mobile device. If it's being viewed on a laptop or a desktop, it's going to occupy 100% of the height of that desktop screen. But the reason I added minimum height to it is because when it actually starts to overflow, I want it to be scrollable. Okay, so if I use height of 100 VH, when it overflows, the overflow is going to be hidden. So that's why I'm using minimum height of 100 VH, so that in case it overflows, you can actually scroll through the web page. Next, I'm going to add a padding, top and bottom of 40 pixels, left and right of 10%. Lastly, I'm going to add the background color of this hair's color right here. To check out the output, I want to click on Go Live to run this on a web browser because I already have Visual Studio Code Live Server extension installed in my Visual Studio Code. So I just click on Go Live. And this is going to open up this project in a web page, and you can see that our background is being applied. So next, I'm going to start working on the header. So I'm going to head back to my index.html file. So inside my index.html file, I'm going to create a div. Now this div is going to have a class of contact header. And inside this div, I'm going to have a p tag that is simply going to say contacts us. After that, we're going to have a div that's going to have a class of line. And lastly, we're going to have another p tag that's going to have this text in it. We want to hear from you. Reach out with any questions or feedback. I'm going to save that. Now I head back to the web page. You can see those items right here in the web page. Contact us. We want to hear from you. Reach out with any questions. So let's start applying styles to them. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I'll just copy this class name. I head to my style.css file. Down here, I'll just paste that class name right here. So first, I'm going to give the contact header a text align. I use center. So I align the content inside this text header at the center. Now I give it a color of this hair's color right here. I'll save that. Now you can start the text inside this container and now the center. They now have this whitish color to them. Okay. So next, I'm going to start styling this contact us p tag. Okay. So I'm going to head back to my style.css file. Then I'm going to say contact header. Then I'll target the p tag. Now the problem we're going to have is that we have two p tag inside this contact. We have two p tag inside this contact header container. We have this p tag that says contact us, and we have this p tag that says we want to hear from you. Okay. and we want to style this p tag differently. They are going to have different styles. So what we are going to do is that we are going to make use of the first child. Okay, so I want to say p tag. I'm going to use a pseudo class called the first child. Now this is going to target only the first p tag of this contact head container. Okay, I'll give it a font size of 2M and a font weight of 500. Okay, now I'll save that and check out the output, and you can see that the text is now actually larger and the style is not being applied to this other p tag right here because we are targeting the first child of this contact head container. So next, I want to style up that line that's going to be under this contact us. So let's do that. So I'll go to my style of CSS file. Down here, I'm going to say dot line. For the line, it's going to have a width of 60 pixels, a height of 3 pixels, a background color of this hex color right here, and a border radius of 10 pixels. Okay, and let's check out the output, and you can see that we have that line right here. The line is at the left hand side right here, but the line is not underneath this contact us. Okay, so we want this line to be positioned at the bottom of this contact us header right here. So how do we do that? So what I'm going to do, I want to give this a margin 4 pixels, auto, and 8 pixels. Now what this margin property is simply doing is that it's adding a margin 4 pixels at the top of this line, it's adding a margin 8 pixels at the bottom, and left and right is adding a margin of auto. That margin of auto left and right is going to ensure that it's at the center of the web page. So next we're going to target this second p tag. Remember that this second p tag is the last p tag in this contact header container. So we are going to make use of the last child pseudo class in CSS. So I'm going to head back to my code. Down here, I'm going to say dot contact header, the p tag. I want to target the last child. I'll give it a font size of 1M, a font width of 400. And when I check out the text, you can see right now that it's actually looking better. But what I want to do is I want to reduce the opacity. I don't want this text to be as bright as this contact source. Okay, so I'm going to reduce the opacity. I'll give it opacity. I use 0.7. And that's going to ensure that it's a little bit dull and not as bright as this contact source header. Now with that, we are done styling the header. So I'm going to head back to my index.html file. I'm going to wrap this up, wrap up this contact header. Then I'm going to create another div. And this div is going to have a class of contacts. Now inside this contact container, we're going to have two containers. The first container is going to contain the contact details like the address, the phone number, and the email. You understand? While the second container is going to contain the form, it's going to be the contact form container. So let's do that. So first of all, I'm going to create a div. This is going to have a class of contact details. Then now you'll create another div. This div is going to have a class of contacts form. Inside the contact details, you're going to have a div that's going to have a class of detail, which is going to contain each detail. Now it's going to have an icon, but first of all, we have to create an icon container. So I'll give this a class of icon container. So I spell that container correctly. And inside this icon container, I'm going to add an icon, which is going to have a class of far envelope. Now after that icon container, I'm going to have another div that's going to have a class of item. And inside this div, I'm going to have a p tag. This p tag is going to say email. I'm going to have another p tag that's simply going to say john@gmail.com. I'll copy that, then I'll drag that down. Then for this one, it's going to be far map marker auth. There's going to be address. Then for the address, I'll just paste in this random address right here. Now I'll copy that again. Then I'll drag that down. Then this next one is going to be far phone auth. Then the p tag is going to say phone. And for the phone number, I'll just paste something random right here. Okay. When I go back to the web page, you can see those items I just added right here. The email, the address, and the phone. You can see those items right here. So next, we're going to add the items of our form. So I'm going to go back to the index.html file. Now, the contact form container is going to have two divs. The first div is going to be the input container that's going to house all the inputs. And the second one is going to be the message container that's going to house the text area we're going to type the message on. So first of all, I'm going to create a div. I'll give this div a class of input container. Then after that, I'll create another div. I'll give this one a class of message container. And after that, inside my input container, I'm going to create a div that's going to have a class name of input. And inside this div, I'm going to create an input. It's going to be of type text, and it's going to have a placeholder of your name. Then I'll copy that and drag that down multiple times. 1, 2, 3. This one is going to have a placeholder of your email. The next one is going to have a placeholder of your phone. Then this last one is going to say subject as a subject of your message. Inside this message container, I'll create a text area. I'll get rid of this ID and name. I don't need them for this project. So I'll add a placeholder that's going to say write your message. Yeah. After that, we're going to have another div here that's going to have a class of action button. You can call it submit button, whatever you want to call it. And inside this action button, we're going to have the button that we're going to use to submit the form. And the button is simply going to say submit now. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, you can see those elements right here. I see all our inputs, our text area, our submit button right here, and also the address, the phone, the email address, everything we added in our HTML. You can see them right here. So next, we're going to start applying styles to them. So I'm going to head to my style.css file. Just go to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say .contacts. I want to give it a display of flex. And what this is going to do is going to ensure that the contents of this content are arranged side by side. They are not going to be arranged vertically. They're going to be arranged horizontally side by side, as you can see right now. Okay. And I'll give it a width of 90%. I want the contact container to occupy 90% of the web page. Then I'll give it a margin 40 pixels up to 20 pixels. Now what this is going to do is going to apply a margin of 40 pixels at the top of this contact, a margin of 20 pixels at the bottom, and a margin of up to left and right. And that's going to ensure that they are centered right here. And to actually see the area this contact container is occupying, we'll just give it a background color. I'll use red. And we'll go back to the web page. You can see the area is actually occupying. It's occupying 90% of the web page, and it's at the center right here. So next, we have to start styling the individual items inside this contact container. Okay, so I'll get rid of this background color. Get rid of this. Then down here, I'm going to say .contact. Then I'll target the contact details. That's this contact details class we created up here. This contact details class we created that contains the details. So I'll target that class. First of all, I want to give it a flex of 1. Now what this is going to do is going to ensure that the contact details occupy as much space as it can. So I'll do the same thing for the contact form container. I'll just drag this down. Then instead of contact details, I'll say contact form. Then to actually see the areas they are occupying, I'll give them a background color. I'll give them a background color of red. Then I'll give this contact form a background color of blue. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, you're going to notice that both of them are going to occupy equal space inside the contact container. And that's what we want. We want them to occupy equal space. That's why we are giving each of them a flex of 1. So I'm going to head back to my style.css file. I'll get rid of these background colors. I get rid of this. And I'll get rid of this. So next, we're going to start styling the element inside this contact details container. Okay. So I'm going to first of all target the DT container. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste this underneath here, and I'll target the detail. I'm going to give it a display. I'll say flex. And that's going to ensure that the icon and this text right here, the content that accesses this text, are arranged side by side. Okay. I'll give it an align items or center, a gap of 12 pixels, and imagine 25 pixels top and bottom, 0 left and right. When I go back to the web, you can see that the contact details are actually looking better now. They are looking arranged. So next, I'm going to focus on actually styling this icon. So let's do that. So I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I want to target the icon container inside this detail. So say dot icon container. Remember that we gave each of these icon a container class. You can see right here, a icon container class wraps around this icon. Use this icon container right here. That's the icon container we are targeting. So I give it a width of 90 pixels, a height of 90 pixels, a background color of this hex color right here, and lastly a border radius of 50% because I want them to be circular. Okay. So when I check out the output, you can see that they are actually circular. They are actually looking really good. But we have a problem. The icons are not inside this container. I want the icon to be at the absolute center of these circles. Okay. So what we are going to do, we are going to give this icon container a display. We are going to use grid. Then we're going to say place the items of this container at the center. Then when I save that and go back to the web, you're going to notice that the icons are now at the absolute center of this icon container. So next, we are going to style the individual icons. Okay. So I'm going to copy this right here. I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. And I just target the icon inside this icon container. I'll give it a font size of 1.3 rem and the color of this orange color we give to our line right here. Okay, I'll save that. And when I go back to the web page, you can see that the icons are now kind of orange. This orange color, they now have this orange color to them. Now we don't want the icons to have similar styles. Okay, for each of them, for the email, the address, and the phone, we want the icons to have different style. Okay, so what we are going to do, we're going to add a unique ID to this icon container right here and this icon container right here. Okay, so I want to go back to my index.html file. Now for the second icon container, I'm going to add an ID. Add an ID. I'll call this one address. Then for the second one, I'm going to add an ID in the icon container. I'm going to call this one phone. Then I'll just copy that address ID name. I'll add to my style.css file. And down here, remember when we are making use of ID, you don't use the dot like you use on class. You use the pound sign. You're going to paste in the ID name. Now in this case, I want this particular icon container to have a background color of this hex color right here. Okay. So we also have to target the icon. So I'm going to say hash address. Then the icon in there, I want to give it its own unique color. I want to give it a color of this hex color right here. I'll save that. And when I go back to the web page, I'm going to notice that this address now has its own unique icon style. Okay, it's actually green, then the background color is actually kind of light green. So let's also do the same thing for the phone. So I'm going to go to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say hash phone. I'll give it a background color of this hex color right here. And down here, I'm going to say hash phone. I want to target the icon inside that phone container. Inside the icon container, I'll give it this hex color right here. Okay, now when I go back to the web page, you can see that the icons are looking really good. So next, I'm going to start styling these p tags. Okay, I'm going to go back to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say .contact details .dta. Now I want to target the item. Okay, remember that after this icon container, we have a div that has a class of item that has this p tag. So I want to target this item class name. Okay, so I want to say .item. I want to target the p tag inside this item. That's this p tags inside this item. But we have a problem. These two p tags are different, and each of these p tags are going to have their own unique style, which means we also have to use the first child pseudo class. Okay, so I'm going to say p I want to target the first child first. I want to give this one a color of white, a font size of 1.6 rem, and a font width of 500. I'll save that. Check out the ads post and you can see that it's actually looking really good. So next we're going to target the second p tag. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Then instead of first child, I'm going to say the last child. Then this one is going to have a color of this color right here, this highest color right here. Then it's going to have an opacity of 0.0 to reduce the brightness of the text. Okay, I want to go back to the web page. You can see we have those text right here completely styled, but I feel they are too close to each other. So I'm going to give the first child a margin bottom. So I'm going to give this one a margin bottom of just 5 pixels. Yeah, this is way better. So with that, you can start styling the contact form container and all these inputs right here. So first of all, I want to style the input inside this input container before I style this message container. Okay, so first of all, let's style up this input container. So I'm going to go back to my style of CSS file. I want to scroll down here. I'm going to say dot contact form. Then I want to target this. So I want to target this class name right here. This, let me just wrap up this contact details. I'm done here. Let me just wrap it up. Then I want to target this input container inside this contact form. Okay, so I'll go to my style of CSS. So I'll just paste that class name right here. Now I want to give it a display of grid. Then I want to give it a grid template columns 1FR, 1FR. And that's going to ensure that every time there's going to be 2 inputs side by side, 1FR, 1FR. So next I want to add a margin bottom to this input. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. And I'll target the input class. That's this input class that wraps around the input, this input class that wraps around each input. Okay. So I'm going to give it not input. I'm going to give it a margin bottom of 20 pixels. I'll save that. When I go back to the web, you're going to notice I will now have a margin between these inputs. Then next, let's actually target the input. So I'm going to copy this again. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I want to target the input inside this input div. And I'll give this input a width of 100%. And this is going to ensure that the input stretches out to occupy 100% of its container. But they are too close to each other, so I'm going to add a gap to them. So I'm going to go back to that grid display, the icon container. I'm going to add a gap. I want a gap between them of 12 pixels. And that's going to ensure that every time there's always going to be a gap between these inputs. I'll give it a height of 55 pixels, a padding of 0 top and bottom, and 20 pixels left and right, and also a background color or a background of transparent because we want it to be transparent. Okay, and you can see our input right here. Next, I want to get rid of that ugly outline. So I'm going to say I want the outline to be none. I won't focus on it. That outline is not going to be there anymore. I won't focus on it. The outline is going to be none. Next, I'm going to add a border of 1 pixels solid of this hex color right here. Okay, and then I add the border radius of 15 pixels. And you can see that the input is actually looking way better. It's looking really good already. So next, when we type on this input, I don't want the color of the text inside the input to be black. I want it to actually be something like white, something that we can actually see clearly. Okay, so I'm going to give this a color. I'll give it a color of this hex color right here. Then I'll give it a font size of 1.1 rem. Okay. Now when I go back to the inputs, and you can see that the input is actually looking really good. When I type on this input, you can actually see it clearly. So the last time I'm going to add to this input is going to be for the placeholder. Okay, so I want to target the placeholder. So I just copy this. I don't have to copy the entire line. I just copy this. So I want to target the placeholder. I'm going to say colon the placeholder. I want to give it a color of this same color we added right here, this same color we added right here for our input, and to give it that same color. Now give it an opacity of 0.7. Now when I go back to the web page, you can see that the placeholder is actually looking really good. Now when you type on it, you can see the text clearly. So now that we are done styling this input, we are going to apply similar styles to our text area. Okay, so what we are going to do, we're just going to share the styles between them. So right here, I want to copy this. I'll paste that right here. Now instead of input container, we're going to target this message container right here. Okay, so I'm going to say dots. I'll just copy the class name from this place. I'll copy this. Don't have to type that long class name. I'll just paste that right here. Then now I want to target the text area. That's this text area inside this container. Okay, so I'm going to say test area. All right, I'll save that. Now you're going to see that both of them are going to share the styles. So I'm going to style the text area placeholder similar way. So I'm just going to copy this. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll say colon placeholder. And that's going to ensure that the placeholder of the text area is actually styled too. So what I'm going to work on is I want to add unique styles to my text area. I think you will agree that this text area is not actually looking the best. Okay, so we have to add its own unique styles to it to actually make it look better. So I'm just going to go back to my style of CSS file. I'll copy this right here. I'll just copy this right here. I'll paste that underneath here. Then first of all, I want to give it a height, its own height of 200 pixels. I'll give it a padding of 20 pixels. And lastly, I'm going to give it a resize of none. Now, what this resize of none is going to do is that it's going to ensure that we cannot do this. We cannot resize the text area. Okay, so I'm just going to say resize of none, and I'll save that. And now return back to the web page. I'll just refresh. I'm going to notice that the text area is actually looking better this way. So next, let's style up this submit button. Okay, remember that this submit button is inside a container called action button. So that's how I'm going to target it. So first of all, copy the action button class name. I'm going to head down, then down here I'm going to say dot contact, dot that action button class name. Now first of all, I want to give it a margin top of 15 pixels. And that's going to add space between the button and this text area right here. So I'm going to start styling the button itself. Okay, so to do that, I'll just copy this, and I'll paste that underneath here. Now I'll just target the button inside this button container. Sorry, not button, it's button. First of all, I'll give it a border of none, a background color of this orange color right here. Now when I return back to the web page, you can see that the button is actually starting to come to life. Okay, so let's apply more styles to it. So I'm going to add a padding 12 pixels top and bottom and 25 pixels left and right, a border of 2 pixels solid this hair color right here, a border radius of 30 pixels, and lastly a cursor of pointer. I'll save that. And return back to the web page. You can see the button is actually looking really good. But I can actually make this text better. I'll just give it a font size of 1 rem and a font weight of 500. Okay, yeah, it's way better this way. And finally, when we hover on this button, we want to remove this background color and make it transparent. Okay, so I'm just going to say on hover of this button, I'll just copy this. On hover, when someone hovers on this button, I want to add a background color of transparent. Now when I hover on this button, you're going to notice that it's going to be transparent anytime I hover on it. It's going to have that border on it. Remember, we'll give this button a border of 2 pixels solid of this color right here. So anytime I hover on it and it loses its background color, that border is going to be applied to it. Now we can apply a transition to make it look better. So in my button styles, I'm going to say transition background 0.7 seconds is in out. I'll save that. That looks way better. Now we are done styling this contact us page. Now All that's left for us to do is to ensure that this contact us page is responsive in all devices. Now, when I reduce the screen size, you're going to notice that this is not actually responsive at all. It's not responsive at all. So let's start working on making it actually responsive. So down here in my CSS, that's where I'm going to write my media queries. I'm going to say media queries. I'll just comment that off. Under this media queries, this is where we're going to write all the media queries for this project. Now I'm going to have 2 breakpoints. My first breakpoint is going to be at screen size of 1280 pixels. I'll comment that off. Then my next breakpoint is going to be at 768 pixels, which is going to be for tablets. Okay. So underneath this label, I'm going to say at media max width of 1280 pixels. Okay. Now to test if this is working, I'm just going to scroll up. Then this container I created, I want to give it a background color of red when I reduce the screen size. Okay, so I'll say dot container. I'm going to say background. I have a background color of red. I'll save that. When I go back to the web page and I reduce the screen size, I'm going to notice that it's going to have a background color of red at that breakpoint, which means our media queries are working. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of this background color right now. Just get rid of that. And the style I want to apply to this is that when we reduce the screen size to less than 1280 pixels, what I want to do is that I want to reduce the padding on the left and the right hand side. Remember, we gave this a padding, this container, that's a container that wraps around everything in the web page, a padding of 40 pixels top and bottom, and a padding of 10% left and right, which means it applies a padding at the left and right of 10%. Okay, so what I want to do is that when you reduce the screen size, I want to reduce that padding. Okay, so that the contents of the web page has enough space to occupy. All right, so I want to scroll down, then I'm going to say padding. Top and bottom is still going to remain 40 pixels, but left and right, instead of 10%, it's going to be 3%. All right, so when I save that, I go back to the web page, you can see that when I stretch it out, it's going to have a padding of 10%, but when I start reducing the screen size, the padding is going to adjust to 3%. You can see that breakpoint right there. So we can go to our next breakpoint. Down here, I'm going to say at media. This time I'm going to say max width of 768 pixels. And what we want to do at this breakpoint is that when we go back to the web page and reduce the screen size, you're going to notice that there gets a point where the contact form and the contact details gets to compress. Okay, so what we want to do now, I want the contact details to occupy at the top. I want this contact form to go below. You understand? And you're going to notice something when I started shrinking. You're going to notice that this address right here, this item right here, start to shrink. We don't want that. We don't want these icons to ever shrink. Okay, so what we are going to do, we're going to go to our icon container. I want to find that icon container. Yeah, I'm going to give it a flex shrink of 0. That way, no matter what, the icon container is never going to shrink. Even at small size, you can see right now, it's never going to shrink. Okay, so back to what we were trying to do. What we want to do is that when you reuse this further, we want this to actually go down. We want this one to occupy the top. So let's do that. Remember that we gave this contact a display of flex up here. We give this contact a display of flex. So what we can do is that give it a flex direction of column. That's going to ensure that the items are arranged vertically. They are flex, yes, but they are going to be arranged vertically. So let's do that. I want to copy this. I'm going to head to my media queries. Down here, I'm going to say, I'm going to paste that right here. Then I'm going to say flex direction. I'm going to use column. And when I receive that and go back to the web page, I'm going to notice that when you shrink to a certain point, it's going to fold down. That is what we actually want. And not just that, when we actually fold down, we want this, each of these, because for small devices, you're going to notice that these inputs are going to be too small. Okay, so for these small devices, we want these inputs to occupy the entire width. Okay, we don't want them side by side anymore. So what we are going to do, we're going to go back to that container. We added a display of grid. Where is that container? right here, this content. I'm going to copy these styles right here. Then we're going to head back down. Then I'll paste that down here. Then I'm going to say I want it to have a grid template columns of just one file. Okay, which means I want only one item to occupy the entire width. I want the other items to fold down. Okay, so when I save that and go back to the web page, you're going to notice that each of the inputs is going to occupy the entire width, while the other one is going to go below it. So we're actually done. This is actually looking fully responsive, but I'm going to add extra styles for mobile devices to make it look extra good. Okay, so down here I'm going to say for mobile devices, which is going to be 600 pixels of screen size. I'll just comment this off. Then down here I'm going to say arts media max width of 600 pixels. And the only thing I want to do for mobile devices is that I want to reuse the margin between each of these inputs. Okay, the margin has this space between each of the inputs. I want to reuse it, and I also want to reuse this. The size of this icon container is going to be too big for mobile devices. On desktop, it's going to look really good, but for mobile devices, that size of 90 pixels is going to be too big. Okay, so I want it to be smaller. Okay, so first of all, I want to look for this icon container class. I'm going to go up here. I'll just copy this icon container. I'm going to head back down. Now give this icon container a width of 70 pixels and a height of 70 pixels. I'll save that. And when I go back to the web, you're going to notice that it's actually smaller. So next, I'm going to reuse the margin between the inputs. Okay, remember that we gave this input a margin bottom of 20 pixels. So I'll just reduce it to about 10 pixels. So I'll just copy this. I'll scroll down to this place. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll say margin bottom. I'll say 10 pixels. That's going to make it look way better. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to work on before we can call it a day is I want to increase the gap between these inputs, this contact form and this contact details right here. Okay, remember that initially it was arranged side by side, so we really didn't notice that there was no gap because they were arranged side by side, and this one was not occupying up to this point. But when we reduce to mobile devices and they are now arranged vertically, you're going to notice that there's not much margin between both of them. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. I'll just increase the gap a bit. So I'll just paste that right here. Then I'm going to say gap. And I'll say 15 pixels. Let me use 15 pixels. And you're going to notice that the space actually increases. If I increase it to 150, just to test that, you're going to notice that it's going to increase, add more margin to it. So I think 20 is going to be the sweet spot. Yeah, 20 is way better. Now with that, you are basically done styling this contact us page. Now if you enjoyed this video, if you learned something new today, smash on the like button and leave a comment below. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm push this content to more people just like you who are going to find it helpful, and basically consider it as a way of supporting the channel. It's not going to take anything from you. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on helpful web development tutorials like this. I'll see you in the next video.